and all of our teachers. I just ask that you continue to bless us this school year, give us the discernment and the knowledge to lead our students and staff well to make decisions that bring you honor and glory. And we just thank you for entrusting us with the opportunity to lead. And we just ask that you continue to bless us as we serve. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay, good evening and welcome to the August 26th Dorchester District 2 board meeting. At this time, I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
All right, motion made by Mr. Guthrie, seconded by Ms. Powell. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, I will call for the vote. Okay, and the motion carries 6 in favor, 1 absent. All right, and at this time, we will move to our district highlights. And we have Mrs. Troy coming on down to bring us the good news. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, Board Chair Dr. Wimberly, Superintendent Dr. Robbins, and board members. At this time, I will turn the podium over to Ashley Smith of Ashley Ridge High School, Student in Action, followed by Tyrone Drakeford, our athletic director, for tonight's highlights.
Good evening, Board Chair Dr. Wimberly, board members, and Dr. Robbins. Students in Action is a service-based club through the nonprofit organization Multiplying Good. Each year, students from all over the state create an impact project. Last March, the Ashley Ridge students hosted a free education renaissance in an effort to reignite a love of learning for students across the Low Country. Their event included interactive student-led stations for every subject area, free books for all the kids, and so much more. They also reached a combined total in our club of over 2,200 service hours last year. Additionally, these students participated in an end-of-year competition requiring them to share their evaluated on their public speaking, answers to on-the-spot questions from a panel of judges, their implementation of the SIA program within their school, and their growth as student leaders. I am proud to share that our SIA team was named the top Students in Action team in the state for the 2nd year in a row. A couple of our students couldn't be here today, Mackenzie Leahy and JJ Gelkin, but please join me in congratulating Lainey Broadhead, Carson Cook, I did you in alphabetical order, Avery Haw, and Kaylee Tanzola.
right, good evening again, Dr. Wimberly, Dr. Robinson, and board. We have some outstanding student athletes that excelled in our 2024 Spring Athletic State Championships. And we're going to start with Ashley Ridge, Miss Elena Braxton. This is Elena's second consecutive state championship in the triple jump. She's concluded the season as a 5A state record holder in the event with a leap of 12.62 meters, equivalent to 41 feet, 4.75 inches at the 5A lower state qualifier. Now for the state triple jump, her total was 40 feet, 10 inches, 0.25. And that mark was good enough for her to be ranked number 18th nationally and number 2 all-time in the state of South Carolina. Atlanta also competed at the Adidas Outdoor National Championship in June, finished second in the triple jump and 10th in the long jump. Atlanta is now in her senior year at Ashley Ridge High School. Congratulations. Next, we will have Miss Samantha Franklin, who is a 2024 state champion in the girls' javelin. And she has a 5A state record also of 147 feet and 4 inches. Last season, she was also ranked nationally number 33 and placed number 3 all-time in the state of South Carolina history. She also competed at the Adidas Outdoor National Championship in June, placing second in her signature event and for a second consecutive year. Samantha competed in 37 javelin competitions as a Swamp Fox. During her career, she secured 35 top 3 finishes in the event and claimed the title of champion on 23 separate occasions. Samantha is now a freshman engineering student at Clemson University. Let's give her a big round of applause. Fort Dorchester, Jalen Berry, who's the 2024 South Carolina 5A state champion in male javelin with a distance of 192.5 feet. Jalen Berry completed his senior year as a 4-sport letterman, having participated in football, varsity basketball, baseball, and track and field. Jalen committed to the University of South Carolina in track and field. Jalen was a huge patriot, not only excelled on the field and the court and in the classroom, but also he was found daily working at the front office at Fort and volunteering in the athletic department. Jalen worked with athletic director Taryn Floyd and is excited to hopefully come back to DDT in the future and to be an athletic director at Fort Dorchester High School. USC got a great patriot and a first-class state champion, and now accepting the award on behalf of Jalen is his mom, Brittany Silver. Please come forward with you here, along with track coach Jaylane Whitfield and athletic director Taryn Floyd. All right, thank you. In Somerville High School, both Somerville High School track and field teams showcased their exceptional talent this past season, with both winning the region title in the boys and girls, and the girls also placing state runner-ups. A standout performer and state champion was Trinity Jones, who brought home 3 gold medals, awesome, 2 in individual events, the 100-meter with 11.72 and the 200-meter with a 24.42-second dash, and won as a part of the relay team alongside Cheyenne Williams, Azada Anderson, and Cameron Dillons, which won the gold in the 4x100 relay with a score of a 47.02. This was truly an outstanding season for Somerville High School student athletes, and Somerville High School is excited to see what the future holds for the Green Wave track next season.
Okay, let's bring everybody up for photos. Once again, this is no small feat. Let's congratulate them one more time. And that concludes our highlights for this evening.
Congratulations again, and thank you all for being here. We'll give them just a second to file out before we move into our public comments. Okay, so as they are finishing up, we will move to our public comments on agenda items. This evening, we have one, Mr. Ben Huff.
Greeting board members. I'm here to address item 6C on the agenda in regards to the school's facilities. The facility I wish to directly speak to are the tennis courts at Somerville High School. The courts are a safety hazard to the players. They are frequently covered in water due to poor drainage and because they were built over wetlands. The courts also have multiple cracks and bubbles which create tripping hazards and cause the balls to make unpredictable bounces. This has been a frequent problem with the courts, particularly in the last 7 years. 2 years ago, the boys' tennis team were lower state champions, but unable to play their playoff matches on their home courts due to the poor conditions. The courts were resurfaced a year ago and have already been destroyed by poor drainage. The girls' tennis team will also have to play a majority of their matches this season away and play their home matches on the town's public courts. This prevents the town residents from accessing the courts and prevents many of the girls on the team from playing matches because court time and space is limited to the town's facility. In 2021, the Somerville High School's athletic director informed me he was aware of the drainage problems with the tennis courts and said he was working on a solution. Unfortunately, no plans have been made in the last 4 years on a path to move forward for the courts for the Green Wave tennis program. I ask that the board please not ignore the tennis players, parents, coaches, and fans of the tennis programs any longer and provide a path forward for Somerville to build new courts in a new location so future teams can celebrate victories on their home courts. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. We appreciate it. Okay. Moving on, we will next have the board chair's report. And the first item under this are our board goals update. So board members, as you recall, we met August 12th, did our summer board advance and discussed our goals for this year. So I believe Dr. Robbins is working on organizing all that, putting the thoughts and plans together, and he will be sending us something shortly regarding what we discussed and asking for our feedback in finalizing those goals. So I just ask that you be on the lookout for that, and when you receive it, you can just look it over and send your feedback in so we can get that finalized, and we will soon have some new goals to add to our board. Especially since we checked so many off this past year, which is a great thing. Does anyone have any questions about that or comments, concerns? Okay, great. I appreciate that. And then the other thing on under my report is the SCSBA Law Conference. I believe it was 2 weekends ago. We were all able to attend that. I know the law conference is a good one because I feel like when it comes to laws, that is something that it's constantly changing and definitely an area where we have to stay current and keep up. So I appreciated that opportunity for us to get an update on some current changes that are coming and just a refresher on that. Would anyone else like to add anything regarding the law conference? Okay. Great. Well, then we will move right along to our board committee reports. And first up, we have Policy Committee. Ms. Bates.
Hi. The Policy Committee had just met at 5 p.m. prior to this board meeting. We currently don't have any policies for tonight, but we, and I don't believe we'll have any for next time, but we do have another policy meeting coming up next month before the board meeting. Let me confirm that date offhand. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me. Our next policy committee meeting will be September 23rd at 5 p.m. And that is all.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Bates. All right. Finance Committee. Mr. Trevor.
Nothing tonight.
Okay. Thank you very much. Facilities, Mr. Farnsworth.
I'm going to leave that for Dr. Robbins. I know during his superintendent's report, in speaking with him, the referendum program is picking up some steam and moving forward. So good stuff.
All right, great. Thank you, Mr. Farnsworth. So looks like now we get to the fun of the meeting. Dr. Robbins, you got a lot of stuff for us tonight.
I do. Thank you, Dr. Wimberly, members of the board. We've got several things on the agenda tonight. First and foremost, I wanted to start off with a first week of school update. You know, it's probably the most unusual start to a school year I've ever experienced. But we did get off and running. I will say that when we look at our first start of a school year, we look at our enrollment every single day for 10 days to get a gauge on where we're at. I put the numbers in there. That includes preschool numbers. I always include preschool numbers because they take up seats and space in our buildings when we talk about capacity. But the number we're at is actually only about 350 students above where we were last year at this time. So, and a decline from where we ended the school year. I can tell you a couple things, and we think we'll see some change in that in the next several weeks, but Somerville Prep Academy opened up, and there are 320 of our students that are attending Somerville Prep Academy. Pinewood opened another wing, and so there are roughly 24 students, and we can tell on when they transfer on where those students are going. So again, it's a little bit of a volatile market in terms of where we are with students and families moving into our community, and we keep a watchful eye on it. For us, one of the things that I'll share is it allows us to be, for the most part, fully staffed with teachers, which is always a good thing. Now, we have some specialty teachers that we haven't filled those positions that are always a little bit of a challenge, and we're working on creative ways to do that. But here's a breakdown that I got from our personnel department. We have 290 new certified employees this year. Of those 290, we do have 44 international teachers that we have hired. We felt like it was in our best interest to use our own immigration attorney and those services if we needed to increase the number of international teachers that we have. We do have, and I think you'll see this change a lot in the future, but we have 30 plus alternative route educators. So South Carolina is finally opening up the opportunities for people who want to enter into the profession maybe as a second career and make it a little more enticing for them. We have 195 induction teachers, and then we have 214 new classified employees. So again, that seems like a big number, but remember, we employ over 4,000 people in Team Dorchester. So we feel very good at where we are, the work our personnel department has done, and I'll talk a little bit more tonight about our recruiting and retention efforts. Transportation is usually always a challenge. It's not without its hiccups. We are fully staffed in the transportation department. However, what we really need are more substitute drivers, because with 150 plus routes, people get sick, they call off work, and when they do, it reduces us a driver, and without a substitute driver, then we have to double route a little more. Like any start of a school year, our bus routes are going to move a little bit slower. We hope that those are slowly picking up. And when I've been on the campuses to see how late it's taking our buses to leave, especially the high schools, because it's a ripple effect, they have picked up tremendously. And I usually use Somerville High School as one of my gauges for that. So I feel like things are getting a lot better. And then I would be very remiss if I didn't mention safety. And safety is always, we always talk about it being our number one priority, but it's not just talk. Our Raptor visitor management system is going to help us improve our safe environments, our open gate metal detectors, and the way we use them, and you'll start to receive some more data on that as the course of the school year goes, on how we utilize those, both during the school day, but also at our extracurricular activities. And then Chester obviously has been very advantageous. The reason I mention extracurricular activities, because it's not a surprise that we had an incident at an away school. And what I want to share with our board and with our community is what we do internally, I think, is a really good job. We have great relationships with our local law enforcement partners. Using the open gate metal detectors and having Chester roam through our facilities is a great thing. The partnerships we have with the local law enforcement departments is a really good thing. We do have a reunification plan that we use on our home campuses. One of the things that we talked about and Somerville experienced was, what's our communication plan look like? And so tomorrow, we're going to have just kind of our own after-action review with our high school and our middle school principals to make sure that we close any gaps that we may have in terms of our safety protocols. But it is something we work on with our local law enforcement professionals every single year, and I feel good about what our protocols and standards are moving forward when you come at least to our events. We're also going to talk about what does it look like for us when we travel to a destination that may not have our same protocols. And we understand, first and foremost, the safety of our student athletes and our extracurricular activity participants. So again, just know we do have a reunification plan. We're talking about the what ifs. And if Friday night did anything, it really made us step back and maybe question, some of our protocols and do we need to rethink them? So I feel very good about it. But I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have in light of what happened Friday.
I do have a question. Actually, it's not about Friday, but I know with our international educators, we are still waiting on, do we have definite dates on when those teachers will arrive?
Is it September? Yeah.
Okay. Do we know, as far as covering those positions right now, are we trying to do like long-term subs where possible, or who, because I know it's in some of the core area classes. They are all covered. Okay. Very good.
And just so you know, it was almost like, I hate to say it, but a perfect storm because it's new that we're doing it ourselves. And to do that, we have to have a higher ed institution that authorizes them. And so Trident Tech is our higher ed institution. Well, they had a retirement. And so the request went to, Dr. Thornley, and it sat there. And we really didn't know why it was in kind of purgatory and waiting until our immigration attorney said, hey, listen, I have to have this signed so we can proceed. And so when we figured it out, now that's been, memorialized. We won't have that same issue moving forward. But it was the first year trying to get this up and running. So awesome. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say the only thing I had regarding the safety is just to emphasize again, I really do appreciate and love the effort that our district has put in for our home games and all the things we have in place. As a parent, I feel very good about my kids being in our games and in our facilities. And I really like that you as a district and you, Dr. Robbins, are taking an opportunity to also evaluate the situation when our children are away and to utilize that to continue to improve what we're doing. So I appreciate that.
Okay, the next thing I have tonight is a referendum update, and just want to bring, I know it seems like, wow, we passed the referendum and, what's happening, and we're kind of in that little pause phase to get things orchestrated. The money will be available to us. It's not about money right now to work on these projects. It's about getting our construction services in place. So, we have chosen several projects, including the elementary school in the ponds, to be a CM at risk project. So it's a guaranteed maximum price. That particular project, we had interviews on Friday, and we have this week to negotiate, and we'll make a recommendation to the board on September 9th. The construction management process was a little different. So we went through those interviews, and I shared with the board chair and Mr. Farnsworth of the Facilities Committee a little bit about our concerns, and the markup and the percentage they want to charge we felt like was really extreme, and we could really do a good job of trying to hire, even if it's a short-term, restricted 36 months team within our facilities and operations team to manage these projects based on what we carve out from CM at risk and what are our referendum projects. So more to follow on that. But yeah, it was an extreme amount that we would be paying a construction management firm. I've talked to Mr. Souls, and during the facilities report, or even right now, if you want to ask him some questions. But he and I sat down with Ms. Meunier, with Ms. Cash, with Ms. Grice, and honestly, a couple members of his team, and tried to look at this holistically to see what we could do and stretch these referendum dollars as far as we can and not spend them on services, but actually on projects. I feel like we have done a really good job as a district to prepare ourselves for this. I think that our CART is going to be advantageous as we move forward, just to maintain that level of transparency so that you can see the work that's taken place. And just a little sidebar to that, our referendum page is set up really nicely that if you go to it and you click on projects, you can see every single building. And right now they're just listed. But once we get a construction management at risk hired, we do have some Gantt charts. We'll start populating when we're going to start, when we expect to complete, and then picture updates. So you can go, if your child goes to Austin Bailey Elementary School, you can click on Austin Bailey and you can see the projects, their start, and expected completion dates and pictures of the projects in process. So, but it's slowly starting to get to a point, where you'll start to see a lot of things. But right now, a lot of planning, permit requesting, and again, some of that you'll see in our facilities report as well. The first meeting of our Citizens Advisory Review Team will be on September 16th. We have not pulled them together yet. I sent them an invitation. We'll meet in McKissick Museum just to go over roles, responsibilities, and expectations. But because we didn't have any projects started yet, we didn't feel like pulling them together was really necessary. But that's kind of gives you a high-level look at where we are with the referendum, and happy to answer any questions.
If I can just add on, and so having now been on the board and done projects, both design, bid, build versus CM at risk, I think we might all agree that CM at risk was night and day easier, better from our standpoint. And so for folks kind of watching, and a lot of folks out there probably don't know that that's a foreign term, CM at risk, construction manager at risk. Essentially what you're doing, you're finding a contractor, a general contractor, large construction company that is essentially taking on just what it says. They're taking on the full risk of that project. So we give them the scope of the project, we give them the budget of the project. They take that project on, and it's 100% on them to finish that project on time, on budget. And if they don't, that's on them.
Yeah.
They took on that risk to begin with. So again, we've had good luck. East Edisto was done CM at risk, not without its faults, but for the most part, I would just tell you night and day, taking concerns off of our plate. It was a very, very seamless project. So good stuff.
All right, I will turn it over to our academic team and our data team to provide you with a review of our SC Ready and our DD2 performance in 2023-24. Jordy?
Yes, Madam Chair, Dr. Wimberly, Dr. Robbins, and the rest of the board members. Tonight, we're going to give you a high-level view of our data that you're going to see grades 3 through 8 with our SC Ready scores, and then at our high school, you'll hear our data about our EOC and our WIN data. And tonight, you're going to hear from Mr. Thad Schmank. Mr. Schmank works in our data department, and he does a great job of breaking down the data and putting it into folders for our principals. So they don't have the time to break that data and down to analysis of that data. And then what you're going to see tonight after that, after he gives his presentation, now what is the data telling us? And so we're going to use that data to drive our decision making with our academic team. And then our academic team is putting together a course of action of things, how we're going to improve. As they say, you either get better or you get worse, you never stay the same. And so we want to make sure we're always striving to improve. And so you're going to hear from our team tonight. I know you probably have a few questions. If you could save those questions at the very end, we'd appreciate that, because you're going to get to see, we might be able to answer some of those questions after you hear Thad's data presentation as our academic team is putting that plan in place. And many of those things have already started to occur. We had a lot of those data meetings when we got preliminary data this summer, and we're looking at that data and we put together our academic plans throughout the year, and we plan backwards. And so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Schmink.
Dr. Wimberly, Dr. Robbins, members of the board, it's good to be with you tonight to talk a little bit about our basically 3 points of data that have been unembargoed. I know everybody's eagerly awaiting our school report card information, but that unfortunately will not be unembargoed until the middle of October. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about SC Ready, EOC, and our career readiness exam. So we'll start with our SC Ready. As you know, this year we had a pass on the biology or the science because the state was retooling. So we really only have ELA and math scores to discuss. As you can see, as you'll see tonight, we're going to go over the results. We're also going to go over how we take a look at those results. We're going to slice it a couple different ways. So first here, you can see we break it down by all grade levels. We don't have like a one number that you can use, not until the official school report card comes out. So we like to take a look at each grade, and we do this for one main reason of we don't want one or two good performances to mask something else. So we like to take a look at every level. As you can see, it's represented by the yellow for both ELA and math. We're doing a very good job of outperforming the state. Historically, we've done that, and you can see this year we're very happy that our 6th grade math has finally beat that state average, and we're just a slight bit off in 7th grade of beating that state average. So we feel like we're in pretty good shape, but of course, we always want to know, well, we're beating the average, but where does that put us? So when we go ahead and we rank, we do have this information that we can do. We can rank by grade. And you can see here that for the most part with ELA, there are roughly 80 school districts in South Carolina. So as long as you're in the top 20 or more, you'll be in the top 25%, the top quarter. So as you can see there, for the large majority of our grades for ELA, we're in that top 25%. And for math, we're just a little bit behind on that. Nothing too surprising for us. Our ELA has been the stronger of the two, but we're happy to see that our math ranking is increasing over time. Of course, though, our biggest competitor is ourselves. So we always want to make sure, we're glad that we're outperforming the average of the state, and that we're in that top 25%, but how are we doing against ourselves? Here we can see ELA over time, and basically what you want to see is you want to see the low category of 1 shrinking, and you want to see 4 expanding. 1 would be not met, 3 is meets, 4 is exceeds. So we want to see our green and our blue growing, and we want to see the red and orange shrinking, and over time you can see that is generally occurring for our ELA. But a little slip back, this is our first year, but we are also coming off of a record-breaking year last year. And yes, last year was phenomenal gains. So having a slight return on that, or is I would think to be relatively expected. But as you kind of saw in this earlier slide, the change, the difference over those grade levels over the years really is pretty reasonable and averages out quite well. And then, of course, our math, we also want to see how are we competing against ourselves over time, and we're very happy with the results that our red is continuously shrinking and our green and blues are continuously increasing, albeit not at massive amounts, but at least we're consistently moving in the right direction. Now, when we compare, I know one of the big questions a lot of people ask is how are we doing, compared to pre-COVID? So if you take our pre-COVID average here and we look at our ELA, we've been basically recovered from COVID for the past 2-3 years. We quickly recovered out of it. As you can see in 2023, all of those scores, if it's a positive, if it's a number over 0, we're outperforming pre-COVID measures. So you can see there that not only did we recover from COVID, but that we are continuing to exceed pre-COVID achievement, which is great. And then in 2024, you can also see that all those numbers are still well into the positive, moving forward in a good direction. So we pretty much feel like we have recovered from COVID, and and the reason for the kind of diagonal color lines there is another way that we like to look at the data as well, is you want to look at cohorts. So for example, our third graders in 23 were a 4.01, and in their fourth grade year in 2024, they actually increased their achievement. And so that diagonal achievement there is showing positive that we're holding, each of those cohorts are sort of holding their ground as they move forward. Okay. Now, math, as you can see, we're still in the negative numbers. Luckily, most of our numbers here, except for in 8th grade, are pretty much down into getting into the single digits, and we're definitely nearing 0. 0 would be getting back to that flat level of equal to what we were doing prior to COVID. And as you can see there again, those cohorts are tending to move in good directions, although we are definitely, and I think you'll hear us speak tonight about 7th and 8th grade math, definitely a concern, but that 8th grade math, I think it was 8th grade math in the state, also saw a little bit of a dip. So we're fixing things in 6th grade, and now we know we have to shift that focus towards 7th and 8th. Good, taking a look at our EOC, which basically takes us into our high school, as well as some of our classes and of our honor students who are in middle schools. You can see here again our performance as it compares to the state, and we are doing a very good job of outperforming state averages across algebra, English 2, U.S. history, and biology. It's probably the last year that I'll show you English 1. We've pretty much phased out of using English 1 altogether. But again, we want to always take a look at ourselves. How are we doing against ourselves over time? Are we improving? And we are very pleased about our algebra, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But as you can see, they're making a lot of gains. Our A's, our B's, and our C's all increasing, which of course means that D's and F's are going down over time. So we're very excited about that. English 2, as you can see, we're kind of holding even. A little bit less on the A's, but the B's and up and down. So it's kind of a wash on how we're doing there with English 2. U.S. history and the Constitution is sort of the same. And in biology, the next slide here, you can see just a slight movement in the positive direction. So kind of holding our own on 3 out of the 4, and the math is the one that's really, really seen that huge improvement. And it's played out. So, I commented earlier that we are doing well on beating all the state averages, but we kind of know, well, how well? Are we just over the average line, or how far are up we? Again, the same 80 districts that we compare ourselves to. You want to be in that top 20, and we're excited that our algebra is broke into that top 10, and all of our EOCs are doing very well compared to the rest of the state averages. Of course, how do we fare against ourselves? You can see there for algebra, biology, English 2, and history, all of those graphs over time are moving in the direction that we want to see. On the left-hand side, that average score, even with more students taking the count on the right, our average is continuing to increase over the years. Okay, especially in our algebra or biology. Like I said, English 2, history, just a very slight movement back. Then our last for this evening is our career readiness assessment, which we use Win Ready to Work. That's the state product. And as you can see here, this is a little bit of the history with this test, just to give you some context. We used to do work keys, then we went to Ready to Work, then we went back to work keys, now we're back to Ready to Work. So we've kind of flip-flopped, so we don't really have a lot of historical data for this test, in case you were wondering. But last spring was the time when we first took this in 2023. As you can see there, representing the zero, in case you're wondering what 0, 2, 3, 4, 5 is, those are the different levels of certification. 0 obviously meaning not earning a career credential at all. 2 is the lowest, 5 is the highest credential earned. We're really aiming for 3s, 4s, and 5s. So that's why in that second chart, you can see there how we've kind of married those two together to show you that in 2023, we had about 60% of our students earning an achievement level 3 or higher, and in 2024, about 54.8% of our students achieving that or earning that credential. Another thing I want to say here to try to put things a little bit into context for the public as well is to say that we have to remember that this is a test that is not mandated. It is required for us to offer the test. It is not required for a student to take the test. Also, we also have to consider that over the last 5, 6 years, this district has done such a great job of making kids aware of what it takes to become either career or college ready or both for the report card. The students are really well in tuned. And because of a lot that we've done with our CTE, our apprenticeships, some of our internships, there are a lot of these other pathways that students are now using to become career ready. So it's not the emphasis for some students isn't quite on this test as it used to be, given these other paths. So again, I'm not making any excuses for the decline in the performance there. I just think that putting that information out there in context gives everybody a little idea that I think we'll still see a good score on our school report card when it comes to being college or career ready. And then we also like to slice this to help us across our entire curriculum. We also like to look at our math. There's 3 sections to this test: math, data, and reading. And we can see there that we're doing a comparatively equal job with what the state and how the state is performing. Our average scale score is just a little bit higher than the state scale score. And we use some of this information to drive some curricular decisions that we make at the high school level. I do also want to point out that to earn that level 3, 4, 5, that it's not your typical average. So I could earn a 5 on math and a 2 on reading and a 4 on data and average that out. That's not how that works. You must achieve, so in order for me to earn a level 3, I have to earn a 3 or higher on all 3 tests. So I could be a 5 in math and a 5 on data and a 2 on reading, and my score will unfortunately be at that 2 level. So it's going to be where your lowest score is going to be. It's not going to be a complete average out. Right, so just a little insight into that as well. Okay. And again, how are we ranking? We're, again, out of those 80 districts, we're coming in on math around 24, data around 22, reading around 20. So somewhere between that, we're in that second quartile, if you will, for our performance there across the state. Okay. I think I'm going to turn it over to our curriculum team now to explain our plan moving forward.
I was going to try to remember it all, but it'll be a lot to pull from my memory. So, good evening. Sorry for the delay. We are going to, like Mr. Doherty said, now that Mr. Schmink has shared the data with you, our intent is to kind of show you what our next steps are, because we talk a lot about data and how it drives all of our decisions. So we are going to give you a bird's eye with a quick, in-depth view at everything that we have planned for this year, and then certainly can entertain any questions that you have for any of us at the end. So first, we just kind of wanted to really focus on some things that we are doing district-wide at all schools, at all levels. And one of the biggest parts of that is really strengthening our Tier 1 instruction, which is building up the instruction that happens in all of our classrooms, all of our grade levels, really focusing on that instruction that all of our students get. We have a saying that you can't intervene your way out of a not strong core, and I think that's what our data really shows us in a lot of areas. We spent a lot of time talking with principals. This summer, we did a deep dive into their data with their whole admin team. Every school brought assistant principals and the whole team, and we spent 3 hours with them really not just looking at the number, but then digging into which groups of students that is, which courses are that, which grade levels, so that way they could really be specific in designing goals and areas to focus for their schools. So that falls under really a lot of what we're doing for strengthening classroom instruction as a whole. Also, we've talked about this last year, but this year we are fully implementing the new state standards in ELA, so that already brings a major shift and a major change at all levels in all of our classrooms for ELA. So that is across the board, K-12, all new ELA standards, full implementation this year. We also this year, because we will fully adopt new math standards next year across the state, we are spending what we call a bridge year this year. So our K-2 classrooms are jumping in because those are our untested. We don't have any state accountability assessments in K-2. So those teachers are starting full implementation this year. So that way when they roll up to the next grade level next year, it's required by the state, they already have those skills and they're ready to roll. And then our teachers and PD coaches and content specialists spent a lot of time starting last December, January, really digging into those standards and looking at, as we roll up with the standards, what skills might students be missing if we don't build that bridge for them. So we didn't want them to go from one set of standards to the next without making sure that we were filling any gaps that students would miss through those. So we did that K-12. So spending this year at all schools as a bridge year for our math standards so that we get stronger this year, but also really set ourselves up for success next year. Also, professional learning communities, you guys have heard about that. We have been working on PLCs and DD2 forever, but also really kind of getting back to our roots and making sure we're using that time in the best way that we can. Thank you to the board for approving PLC Wednesdays for elementary schools. That right there gives them an extra 45 minutes to really dive deep into that data and planning and analyzing their curriculum. So that's been huge. And also using those PLCs to hold data discussions, debriefings after common assessments, after map testing, after class assessments, so they can really look to see what are their students learning, what do they have, and what do we need to go back and teach, and what do we need to push our kids further on some of those skills if they've already mastered them. Student-centered coaching, we're super excited about. This is a new initiative for us this year. We are working on this with our PD coaches in each building, and something that we really came out of last year seeing is that our teachers and our buildings really need another coach in the building. So someone that can work with all teachers to help them refine a specific area, to help them grow and develop if it's content delivery or management, and really just to be another advocate for the teacher in the classroom when they feel like it's an area that they want to grow. So we're very excited about that. It is a training that we will spend all year doing. So we last week had 2 days of training with our PD coaches and an administrator from each school, and then they kind of have a little bit of work to do over over the next 6 weeks, and then we come back and do the next training. So we're very excited about those practices that will benefit all classrooms. Next is continued focus on MTSS. We've talked a lot about MTSS. That is our intervention process, how we identify students that may need additional support. Last year, all schools developed an MTSS action plan specifically for their building, and we did that again this year. So they reviewed what they did last year and really looked for those areas of growth, and then developed a new plan this year. So that will help them continue to identify students that need additional support and ways to deliver that. Next is instructional school visits. We started those. If those of you that have been around for a while know that we did these a lot before COVID and kind of got away from that. And we moved back to school visits last year. So we'll continue those this year. And that is where our whole district team visits schools. And we really focus on 4 areas when we are there. Math instruction. If you go back to that data, I'm sure you know why we're focusing on math instruction. Our digital learning environment, MTSS, and PLC. So those big rocks that we know we're going to see an impact and change in student achievement, we're then going back and looking for those things in schools, and then they get feedback on those specific areas and some next steps and things to work on after the visit. So we're excited about that. And then Edmonton will continue to use that as a differentiation tool at each level to best meet students' needs. Okay, so now I'm going to just talk specifically. There will be some things that will kind of bleed in from area to area, but that last slide was really things at all levels across the entire district. So now I'm going to talk about level and content area specific things. So we already talked about how we have new standards in ELA this year. So along with the new standards comes new instructional materials from the State Department. So last year, we adopted HMH, we agreed to adopt HMH into reading at the elementary level, and this year we are fully using that curriculum. And along with that, we had teams of teachers and our PD coaches over the summer work on a weekly instructional planning guide, and it's amazing when we had new teachers join the district and during onboarding, when they see the tools and the resources that they have available, they were kind of blown away. So that makes us feel like we are doing a good job providing the resources that they need for the classroom. We also, part of that new adoption and the new standards, is we went back and we updated our instructional model for literacy. So we needed to align that more closely with science of reading, best practices. We needed to use our high-quality instructional materials from the state. There were some things that we just kind of needed to go back and update since we originally started using the literacy model several years ago. We also, it includes that building vocabulary and those foundational skills, which are now included in the state standards. And part of the HMH into reading is there's a structured reading and writing component that now we use for our literacy instruction in classrooms as well. We also, for years, have used common assessments, so we went back and really ensured that those were aligned to the new standards, aligned to the way that students were going to be assessed on SC Ready. Also, this year, you guys, again, if you've been in DD2 for a while, you know that Read 180 is our literacy intervention of choice for starting in 4th grade. Well, now there's been a change to Read 180. Used to be System 44 was for 3rd grade, and there's just been a Read 180 update. So now we start with Read 180 starting in 3rd grade, and then it can just adapt based on the skills that the students need. And also, we've talked a lot about just the focus on those early literacy skills. And in DD2, we now, this year, have 15 elementary schools that have started letters training. We had 5 start last year, and the last 10 started this fall. And then we'll continue to use UFly to meet those foundational skills in kindergarten through 2nd grade. So for elementary math, we have an amazing math academy that is open for all of our math teachers, kindergarten through 5th grade. It is an intense 3-day training that teachers can sign up for over the summer, and it teaches teachers how to teach math. So it really digs into that conceptual knowledge, the prerequisite skills that students need to understand, and teaches teachers how to teach those skills so that students are ready for the math that they will have that year. Lots of manipulative usage, lots of looking at the standards and what's above and below the standards, so teachers feel equipped to deliver the math content in elementary classrooms. We also have updated instructional planning guides that include the units in math. The pacing in math is in units, and then it aligns especially those grade levels that have that bridge year, like we were talking about earlier for math. We updated our math model again, not again, for the first time since the inception of the DD2 math model. And it really, the great thing about this model is it puts a lot more autonomy into teachers' hands to make decisions that they need to make for the needs of their students. So it used to be very scripted, where it was this much of a mini lesson and this much of independent practice and small group, and now that's one component, but it also is, if I know that I just gave a common assessment and I need really to spend some time in small groups, teachers have the autonomy to make the decision based on the needs for their class. They may not need to do an entire 20-minute mini lesson with the whole group. They can spend their time in small group. There also is some high-level math tasks that students work through that they seem to be enjoying so far. So we're excited about the changes to the math model. And then again, the common assessments that have been adjusted to ensure the bridge year. So for middle school ELA, again, you're going to see some of these things because some of these things will encompass multiple levels. This year in middle school, they adopted the step up from the elementary instructional materials. So they are using HMH into literature. So the format is different, same company, but the format is different. So all of their curriculum, the curriculum writing teams over the summer really dug into that so that they were ready for that this year in the classrooms. Part of that means new pacing guides and instructional units for all of the new standards and the new materials. And then again, whenever you have new standards, everything changes, so common assessments, and they were really intentional to ensure that those aligned to the depth of knowledge levels of the standards, so that way they were really assessing at the same level that the standards are written, the same level that those students will see on SC Ready. Also spent a lot of time with professional development for teachers on using those documents, understanding those standards, as well as all of the resources that we get through this from the State Department textbook adoption. And again, we'll continue to use Read 180 for our intervention in middle school ELA. For middle school math, again, common assessments were updated for the bridge year because they may be, even though the standards haven't been fully adopted, they may be teaching skills that they did not necessarily teach the previous year. Certainly always using data to differentiate instruction, more PD for the teachers to ensure that they know how to use the standards documents, and because the State Department doesn't always release information for the bridge year, our district team has really worked hard to ensure that teachers have the resources they need so that when the State Department rolls those things out next year, we're usually ahead of the game. So we're excited about that. Establish a math PLC cadre to provide continued support and build teacher efficacy. I also want to say, which we didn't include it up here, but we also last year, we kind of realized that we have a ton in the Tri-County area, have a lot of math knowledge, and when we see other districts who might be seeing increases in their scores, then we want to know what they're doing. So we, at the end of last school year, and we plan to do it again this year, are trying to meet with the Tri-County area math teams as well. Also, we learned as we were going through some textbook adoption discussions, maybe textbooks that other districts had used in the past and not seen success with. So we're excited about that partnership and how we can learn from one another about what's working, and certainly if something isn't working, and then we want to stay away from that. Oh, skipped over high school ELA. Again, because we have new State Department, for high schools, we adopted McGraw-Hill. So different company for our new ELA standards, different materials in high school, but they did also get new materials this year. that part of those new materials is that professional development that all teachers will get in order to use the new materials. Again, common assessments have to be realigned and rewritten. Also, we're working on the alignment between CP honors and AP level. That is a consideration at the high school level. And again, using Read 180 across all levels for our literacy intervention. For high school math, updating those common assessments. We also, as we talk about the changes to the new standards, it's going to be a big deal across the board, but it's going to be huge in high school because it will completely change the order of courses being taught. But a part of that is that probability and statistics will be integrated into other courses. So that was a lot of getting during our bridge year now, preparing for that. Oh, there is the Tri-County Math Meeting. I thought we put it in there. Approval of innovative course, transition to algebra. This is a support for those students that need some additional help to be successful in Algebra 1. And then again, just like in ELA, aligning the CP honors and AP level math courses. And then last is really how we're attacking the WIN data that Mr. Schminks shared last. And I can't remember if he said this, but WIN is not necessarily tied to a specific course, whereas when we look at our Algebra EOC, then we can go back and look at our algebra courses. But these are skills that students learn across a variety of courses and across all content areas. So ways that we were brainstorming and things that we're really going to focus on this year to see an increase in those scores is, number one, just increase awareness. He talked about we have to offer it, students don't have to take it. Some students see there is a meaning behind it, whereas some students don't. So really just bringing awareness to staff, students, and families, we feel like is where we need to start for that assessment. Also, practice questions across multiple classes. We talked about it's not necessarily tied to one specific course, but problem solving, reading diagrams, things like that can go across all courses. And then a plan for students to utilize test prep to help prepare them for the assessment when it's offered. And then including white graduation cords for students that meet the career readiness through a qualifying score on WIN. So those are some things that we will start this year as we really focus on increasing WIN scores specifically, since they are not tied to a course. That was a whirlwind. So, questions for us? Sorry for talking a mile a minute, but I felt like I wanted to make sure I got it all in.
I have one random question, and it's on the last thing you talked about, because that was a lot of information. Do we incentivize like taking that test in any way? Do we offer like students something like, if you take this test, you get to, I don't know, something? Thank you.
I think Chrissy's going to talk about that, but we've kind of talked about we have to really just approach it differently.
I just know kids like rewards, and if there's something to be...
Grown-ups like rewards?
Yeah,
Yes.
high schoolers do still like rewards. Sometimes we'll do a push to get kids in, to get them tested. Sometimes they're sort of kind of like push, pull, drag, or tow, or just trying to get them in there and get them in the door and get them tested. But that graduation cord, I think, is a good incentive. Kids want the bling to wear at graduation. So we did start doing this year a black cord for college ready and a white cord for career ready. So there, of course, in addition to the WIN assessment, there are more ways that students could be qualified for career ready. But if they get a 3, 4, or 5 on the WIN, it automatically gets them that career ready. So that's something that's very tangible and achievable for them.
Is there anything else we've explored apart from the core, just to incentivize them to take the test? Because, I mean, I know, like, my kids are going to be super motivated by the cord. Like, mine are going to love that. But not every kid might care as much about the cord, but maybe there's something simpler that could get them in the door. I was just curious.
Well, I will say that there is one incentive for students, for seniors especially, or for students as juniors, that they want to be able to have early out as a senior. That is a requirement. In order to get early out as a senior, you do have to have already met your college and career readiness indicator. So that is a great incentive for the seniors. But I do like the, have the chance this year to be able to talk with principals and see what we can, other incentives that we can put in place to get kids into the door and get them tested, and to also have them participate a little bit more in some of this test prep. But I think a lot of that goes back to the first kind of bullet on the slide was we really need to re-engage people with what the assessment is, why are we doing it, how can it benefit you? So getting that information back out again, not just to students, but to families and even teachers. We've had a lot of turnover in teachers and administrators since we started giving this assessment. And I think some people, sometimes it just takes takes an effort to step back and readdress why are we doing it? Why is it important? And that's something that I think we could stand to look at again.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
By way of incentives, I think one of the things you can do is actually ask the students to give you suggestions. Mm-hmm. A lot of times we like to give people things that we would want, and come to find out that's not really what's going to incentivize them to do it. So that's a thought.
Yeah.
I'm looking down there. I didn't know if anybody else had anything. So super quick, I just want to say thank you. I really do. I appreciate the focus on the academic side of the house. Sometimes, and it's a balance, certainly for the district, we have to balance operational, curriculum, transportation, you name it, we have 1,000 things to balance. But I think what makes DD2 very special, what makes DD2 is our focus on academics. We continue pre-COVID, post-COVID, all this sort of stuff. Like for years, I think we had to focus so much on, well, just how do we get kids in school? We got to worry about plexiglass. We got to worry about masks. We got to worry about like the day-to-day operational stuff just from that. And so now, the past couple of years, we're actually able to focus again, truly, I think, on academics, which I think is our bread and butter. So I did want to ask, and probably for Mr. Schmink, we see a lot of state comparisons. So the district, our district, we're obviously competing against ourselves for the most part. But like the NWEA stuff, and when you start looking at like national normed data, that's where I would be curious, because again, a lot of times we unfortunately hear, oh, the state of South Carolina is so horrible in education. I think those of us in the education world know that's not really an apples to apples comparison. So does that kind of make sense? Like when does that data come out? How do we look at that?
Oh, so NWA data we get from pretty much 3 times a year. We do fall, winter, spring. And of course, we are always sort of fixated on where our kids are going, and how we're doing against ourselves. I always hate to speak off the cuff about data that I haven't reviewed in the last couple of hours, especially the amount of data that I've poured over in the last month. I don't want to misspeak. I can say, however, though, that we pretty much have I would say an average spread over so they break it down into 5 quintiles, so 20% groups of 20%. And our population shakes out right about at the national norm. So if you're asking me off the cuff, I would say that, we're right with the nation. But I would prefer to be able to go back and collect those numbers and be able to bring back something more specific. Because again, that 72% of stats are made up right on the spot, right? So
I think Abraham Lincoln said that.
Is that something we can, I'm assuming we're going to include in our academic updates throughout the year as we get those MAP test scores in and stuff?
If you invite and you're willing to sit through boring data, I am always willing to come. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would think even in probably like a workshop setting or something like that, the more of this type of material that we can see and hear and understand, the better. Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Okay, did I hear you say that you are collaborating with the neighboring districts?
Yes, ma'am.
I think that's great. So, there's no need in trying to invent something that's already been created, and you can share that information, and especially when it comes to certain textbooks, et cetera. So, kudos.
And I'll say in relation to that, I think it helped us to feel good about where we are with the transition to new standards, because we have already started talking with teachers and administrators about that a year ago, and how that would overall change things 2 years from then, so that we've been able to develop a plan that we are still implementing now, so that it's not such a shock to our teachers and our students. We've been able to build a bridge there that we can manageably stay on top of for our entire district. Good. But thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I actually have a couple questions. So first, I thank you very much and your entire team, because it looks like, the plans, I can tell you've put a lot of time and effort into the plans, and I appreciate that. I know we all appreciate that very much, and it sounds great. So in regards to that, obviously, I know we do testing throughout the year besides just the SC Ready. So kind of looking at all the plans that you have, like where do you have sort of built-in checkpoints to see, like, how is this working? Is this helpful? Do we need to keep doing this or change courses or,
Sure. So our common assessments that we give, we start giving common assessments in ELA and math in second grade on that look and feel for students very similar to SC Ready. And they're in elementary school, ELA and math, and then other courses, the other content areas for middle and high. So those are our checkpoints, because those are specific to our South Carolina standards, and they're given at the end of each unit, so that way we can see, these students mastered these skills or didn't master these. And to go back to what I was kind of talking about with Tier 1 instruction, that's what we look at to really see are our instructional planning guides and our pacing guides and the resources that we're using this year, are they working for students? And that gives us that throughout the year pulse point on student achievement in specific relation to the content that teachers have been teaching across those content areas.
So will the individual teachers, will they be using that data to?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So at schools hold what we call data debriefings as part of PLCs. So part of that is where district data is shared, so we can look at where we are as a district. The school will talk about what their school data for that grade level, let's say 8th grade math, and then the teacher will be able to compare where they fall and look at their specific skills. And a lot of the conversation about that might go something like, well, Miss Barker, you did not do well in multiplication, but Miss Purvis did great in it. So let's look at how, which is probably really a thing, because multiplication would not be my strength. And so that way it starts a conversation between them, but then also because we have building level PD coaches and administrators that are a part of those, then that information can get carried back and integrated into our district level curriculum. So that way, if someone else is doing something differently that's working, then we want to capitalize on that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think that's great. And then another question I had is something that I've heard a couple times just from people who've asked, and I don't think there's any truth to it, but it'd be a good time to clarify. We have not decreased our instructional time this year, have we?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
If we added 10 minutes to the school day, which counteracted that increase in recess.
Sure.
So we have not, at the elementary level, and we haven't changed the bell schedule at the other level, so we have not decreased instructional minutes.
Okay. And then one other question, sorry. I know I probably should know this, but can you and you can make it a brief, because it's probably, can you explain to me, because I know we had a lot of changes last year, just how it works with our PD coaches, their role, and then do we still have interventionists? I know, and just where they are. Like, I know we share them. It's kind of, I just want to have it straight in my head.
Sure.
Sorry.
Well, that's a great question, because last year the PD coach role was a completely new role. So, anytime something is brand new, it's in development almost. So last year, we had kind of two groups: modern learning specialists, which were our technology experts, and then district level interventionists, which were content area specific. And then we merged those two positions into the PD coach position and placed them at schools. So there is one PD coach at each school. And the intent, the most important thing that they do is to provide content or district level support at the school. So that way they're there to support the teachers at their schools. But as we got feedback from building administrators, from PD coaches, from us through observations, talked to teachers and things, we kind of went back to that job description and refined it a little bit for this year. So what it looks like this year for all PD coaches at the elementary and middle schools is that they are at their base school, which is the school they're assigned to, for 3 days. And that's really where they focus on those things like they participate in PLCs, they plan with teachers, they coach teachers those days. That's when they really focus on the parts of their job that are tied specifically to their school building. And then on Thursday and Friday, they're not flex days isn't a good, because that makes it sound like do whatever you want, but that's where they might focus on their district level projects. So there might be a DLE team, there might be the team that's working on our instructional planning guides, because we worked on them all summer, but you throw one hurricane in there and you have to go back and change everything. So the only difference at the high school level is because we only have 3 high schools and there's a smaller number, larger number of students, but a smaller number of buildings. And then RISE, they are in their base school 2 days a week, and then they use 3 days to travel. And that, a lot of that is because of what they do is so content specific, instead of at an elementary school where one teacher usually teaches multiple content areas. So same idea, just their schedule is a little bit different. Does that clarify that?
It does. So they do all content, though.
Well, so they are on teams. They can support all content, yes. But they are, if for example, the ELA instructional planning guide, those were written by a group of PD coaches whose specialty is ELA.
Okay.
But then if I am not on the ELA team, and I'm on the math team, I could still walk into a 3rd grade classroom and coach a teacher, because a lot of what we do when we meet with them monthly is to make sure that we kind of debrief so that everyone knows what's going on with all of those content areas. And then if it's not something that the PD coach knows how to support, then they just reach out to the people that are on the team to support that specific area.
Okay. So every school has a PD coach.
Yes, ma'am.
And then what about interventionists? Do any schools have interventionists anymore,
So interventionists that pull students, yes.
Yes.
Schools still have interventionists.
So they kind of get those with their title money?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that might vary from school to school.
Yes. So every school has Read 180 as an intervention, sure. And then any additional intervention needs they meet
for
through
small groups.
Mm-hmm.
And,
yes, ma'am. Additional school funds.
Okay. All right.
So if they don't have like the title money, they wouldn't have like a math intervention.
Well, some schools use different funds, yes, but that's not an allocation from us, I guess, if that makes sense, outside of Read 180.
How many of our schools have the math interventionists?
So middle school has Math 180. That is our math intervention at the middle school level. So all middle schools have Math 180. But we can certainly compile that for you. I know that's something I'm pointing to Ms. Kelly, like she's sitting right here. That is something that she gets from schools for their title plan, and a lot of that sometimes is contingent upon filling open positions. So sometimes it's kind of making sure all of our classroom positions are filled, and then if they have a person for that position, then they'll shift them to that position. But we can certainly get that information together for you.
Thank you, I appreciate
Absolutely.
you.
So just quickly back to kind of Ms. Wimberly's points there. So would you ever run into a situation, so you have your PD coaches that are, it sounds like some of them are content specific areas. They're base school 3 days a week. Would you run into a scenario where that school's really, really, really good at, say, math?
Would I run into a position where that school did better in math because of the PD coach that was assigned there? Mm-hmm. Potentially. I mean, yes and no. I mean, they don't necessarily coach just in their area of expertise. You know, they can coach in multiple different areas. And a lot of what they do that's in their content area specific would be on district level projects. So those are the people that write the instructional planning guides, the common assessments, the PD when we have it that's content specific. So they would still be sharing that knowledge with all schools. But they could, if let's say they only coached or only focused on math when they were observing and coaching and things like that. But the coaching that we're focusing on is more delivery of instruction than it is content specific.
Got it.
But we would certainly monitor, we would know throughout the year if we were seeing that so that we could pull those best practices that were working and use them for every school.
Well, so that's my point. It
Yes.
sounds like we're getting to a better place as far as equity across the district. But I think in my discussions, especially from last year, I think you had pockets of inequity because previously we had the interventionists at the district level that were providing district level content, if you will, right? And we still have that, but now they're inside of a school building, which just presents kind of an individual challenge. So I think we have to think along the mindset of creating equity for, if we're going to have this PDC coach, PDCs moving forward, how do we do that in a way that makes sense? Because, and again, we haven't even talked about it. I think there's probably some duplication there when you start to look at what the Title I facilitators are doing. There's probably some duplication between the PDCs and Title I. So then we get into that. So again, I just, from an equity standpoint, I want to make sure we're doing that as well as we can.
Thank you. Thank you, team.
Never mind. No, that's it. I'll just keep that one to myself.
I think it's raining, so I'm not in a rush if you have anything. Maybe not.
No, when I was in the classroom, I just want to say Lisa Cuthbert, she was an interventionist at that time. And there was, I forgot what it was, but it was something I needed assistance on. And so what she did is she came in and she taught a lesson. And then I observed her. And after she was finished, then she sat and observed me teach the next class. So that was super helpful to me. And I always found her to be endearing when it came to being able to make that delivery. So as long as that's going on and they can decide among themselves, okay, you're really great at this or math or whatever, and you all are open to it, I think it's whoever can do the job really that matters.
Yes, ma'am. She is a gift, for sure. Thank you.
Well, I guess this is kind of the fun stuff, but that was the fun stuff. And honestly, y'all hopefully could tell by that presentation, our academic team is working really hard to try to improve our scores, so really appreciate them. I want to make sure that we have a constant dose of the work that's taken place with our recruiting and retention task force. We had another 2-hour meeting last week. And I think we'd be very remiss if we didn't look at the celebrations, because you know where you want to go, but it's also important to know where you started and the things that we've accomplished as a district, even in the midst of building this recruiting and retention task force. So I've got 11 things on here that stand out that I think are big items for us to celebrate. You know, our after-school childcare program for our staff has been an amazing support for them. You know, we instituted last year the 30-minute duty-free lunch with our elementary teachers. We have certified staff, salary staff increase this past year, not considering the one the year before, depending on where you are on the salary schedule, that's anywhere from 6 to 12.5%. Another 4% classified salary increase. We put 6 to 16% in our extracurricular and co-curricular activity stipend schedule. Again, you've heard our academic team talk about the PLC early release Wednesdays to reduce after-school meetings. Our employee sync bank kicked back off this year, and right now we're trying to get to that 30% threshold that's required by policy for that to be utilized. The Citadel Partnership, which some people may or may not know about, I was talking to Dr. Wilson. We offer up to about 20 positions for teachers who want to pursue a master's degree, where we'll pay for 50% of that program as long as they stay employed with us. The New to Two, which is a new branding of our signing bonuses that we continue to do, $2,000 for certified teachers, $3,000 for special ed teachers. Our longevity stipend for all staff. This year we're instituting a Jeans Friday in the buildings. And then the other thing I didn't put on here that I should have was the work that we did with our transportation department and their incentives for perfect attendance, for double routing, and for recruiting people into the transportation department. So a lot of great things that I don't want us to lose sight on that we're doing as a district. And then currently, we're trying to get to a point where we can get items that we can identify and benchmark with metrics. And so what we did in this last meeting, we basically broke it down into 5 categories: business partnerships, mentorship and support programs, work-life balance, and professional development and onboarding. That's to go along with the work we'll continue to do with salaries. So what we did is we broke the task force down into mini working groups, and the next couple months we'll start to refine some of those things to bring to the board, at least to present to you so you can see what we're working on and the progress we're making. So again, I've got Ms. Powell here, I've got Ms. Koffel, I've got Ms. Meyer, who are all on the task force, that happy to answer any questions for you. Ms. Powell.
Basically, you covered what I would have said, so good job.
Okay.
And we're still working.
Yes, ma'am. So, okay. Okay, well, with that being said, then I will turn it over to Ms. Meunier in our monthly finance report.
Good evening, Chairwoman Wimberly, board members, and Dr. Robbins. We are presenting our first month of this new fiscal year financial reports this evening. We're still working on closing entries that are related to revenues and expenditures that were specific to fiscal year 24. So as we're working through those, some of these numbers may change. Some of our prepaid expenses that were for last year and our liabilities. So it's going to adjust some of these numbers a little bit, and so all of that will flow through the fund balance at the beginning of the year. Right now, the fund balance at the beginning of the year, which means we ended 2024 with, was 24%. That was funny that it's all 24s. But that number may change slightly, but I just wanted to point that out to you. So at the end of July 31st, our total assets are 87.9 million. And then with our changes in fund balance, our liabilities and fund balance will be 87.9 million as well. On our schedule of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance, you'll notice that some of our revenues for local sources, our taxes, we've received our June taxes in the month of July. So again, those were accrued back. So it doesn't look like we got any July taxes, but we're basically a month off with those revenues. We started receiving some of our state aid to classroom money and our transfer from the EIA portion of the state aid to classroom. So our total revenues in the month of July were 13.3 million. Our expenditures were 5.6 million, which again sounds low because we accrue back our salaries for our folks who are on the 12-month, mainly our instructional folks. Those were for the last fiscal year, so those were accrued back. So it doesn't look like a lot of money was spent in July. It was accrued back to June. So at the end of July, our fund balance, the change was a positive $7.7 million. If you look at our cash flow statement next, so we work from left to right. So we're in the month of July, and everything past July is our cash flow just projections. So those are the numbers in blue. As we move through, the actuals are presented in the black font. So July is all actual numbers. So our beginning balance, which is adjusted to show that the board had approved for us to utilize $4.6 million of fund balance for expenditures in this new year. So that is reflected in the beginning balance, looking a little bit different from the $69.3 million that we discussed, because it takes that into account. And then flowing through down to the, again, the total revenues of 13.3, expenditures of 5.6, and our monthly gain of 7.7 million. So our percentage of fund balance at the end of July was 25%. But as we move through, you can see where the fund balance decreases every month because our revenues come in, they don't come in evenly every month. So we get a big part of our local revenues in the months of November, December, January when the property tax bills come in. So we're working off of our fund balance during that time until we get those revenues in place. And that's why you'll see the fund balance go down and you'll see that decrease in revenues over expenditures. I hope that made a little bit of sense. Okay, good. So we did the same thing for projecting our food service fund balance. We have a plan in place to be able to use some of the fund balance dollars to purchase some equipment. We've been just the supply chain and just a bunch of projects. We weren't able to do that last year, so our goal is to do that this year so that we can bring our fund balance down in the food service fund. So those were the financial reports for this month. If anybody has any questions.
I have an ask, and I'm not sure if it makes sense. Maybe some other board members can let me know, or even Tina, let me know. On the cash flow, I'm assuming we still have, you have last year's spreadsheet. Like, do you have this exact same sheet that says FY24?
Yes.
Could we get a page 2 showing that from last year?
Okay, sure.
Just to be able to compare year to year on the cash flow.
Yeah, that would be great. We do the comparisons for on the balance sheet and the schedule of revenues, expenditures, and fund balance. We can print that for you.
Yeah, and I don't, no additional work other than just putting a page 2, just the exact same spreadsheet you saved off from last year, I think would be helpful, so. Thank you.
So I actually had a question about the food service fund balance. So you said that we are purchasing some equipment with that?
Some replacement equipment in some of our kitchens. We have a higher level of fund balance than what the state requires, or allows, I should say. Right, allows. You should only have 3 months worth of your expenditures as in your fund balance.
So are we limited how we can spend that fund balance?
Yes.
And what are the...
Only specifically to food service.
I mean, could we spend it on food? I mean, I know in the past we've talked about a possibility of, maybe like some kind of teacher lunch or something like that. I mean, would that be a possibility?
These are funds that are federally mandated to go for student lunches.
So student lunches or
Adults,
equipment.
Yes.
Those are the only things.
Adult meals are paid for
Staff.
by adult.
Well, that's what I was saying. We could use it for staff. No. Staffing. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes. Okay.
Kind of.
Staffing.
I kind of had a similar question. I know we've talked about in the past, possibly since we did have like our fund balance is growing with the food service, maybe increasing or the tier of like service we get or the quality of food. I know if you spend a certain amount of money, obviously your food package could possibly be improved. So is that something we've considered? Is there like some, I just remember when talking to Sodexo, like there's a cost amount that we pay and that's like the quality of food we get. And, obviously that they make the food within that budget and buy the food and purchase it within that budget. But if we increased our budget for the food, could we have improved the quality? Does that make sense?
I don't recall us in our RFP from Sodexo that they offer different tiers
Tiers,
of food
okay.
levels.
Okay, I was
They
ju-
offer a per meal price that they
Okay.
charge us.
And like, no matter what, the quality is not affected by like, there's not like a way to improve that based on the amount of money we pour into the program.
No, it's all good quality food.
I will digress.
You're right. During the process of the hiring process and going through the contract, there was no, if you pay this tier, you're going to get this quality of food. If you pay this tier, you're going to get this quality of food. There wasn't anything like
Okay,
that.
that's
It
what I was trying to
supposed be
figure out.
Top quality food, and they quoted the price.
Right.
So if there's still a problem with that, then maybe we need to go back and
Yeah, that's why I was
readdress that
asking.
again. So, yeah.
I was asking if there was an option to maybe improve based on the amount of money we're putting in, or if not, then that leads me to
Well, that was that,
a
and that's what I'm saying. That
conversation,
was
yeah.
not an option whenever the contract was signed or negotiated. That was
Okay.
not.
I might have misunderstood, so I
That was
don't, you
not
know.
the case. So if that has changed, then maybe we need to go back and take a look
Right.
at that again.
Yeah.
Can I add something on food service? I think it's always a good option with any contracted service like that every few years to go back just to keep them honest. Not saying that Sodexo's not honest. I don't mean it that way. I mean it to make sure you're getting the best service possible. Yeah. If they know they have to compete, then, you know, things might change a little bit. I'm just throwing that out to the board, because if you do want to do that, we have statutory timelines we have to follow in order to do that.
Madam Chair, I make a motion we accept the financial reports as information.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the financial reports as information made by Mr. Farnsworth. Do I have a second? Seconded by Ms. Hughes. Any discussion, further discussion or questions? Further questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll call for the vote.
I don't think we had that on the agenda as a voting item.
Okay, all right, then if you will, we will just vote by hand. All in favor? Okay, 6 in favor and 1 absent. Motion carries.
All right, so next up is our facilities report, why Mr. Souls is coming up. I want you to know we've been dealing with this tennis court issue, and quite honestly, we are also in conversations with a local patron on more work, not just at the Somerville High School tennis courts, but also the Ashley Ridge and Fort Dorchester High School tennis courts as well. And that's to get lighting for them through a USTA grant. And so we are working on that project. It's been initiated for all 3 locations. This most recent rain, I was able to go down and meet with Coach Magwood and Coach Drakeford and Mr. Farrell, and Mr. Souls has been down there to look at the situation. And so, you know, we can't replace those tennis courts where they're at. It's just not, it's gonna, you're just, you know, continuing to perpetuate the problem. So we looked at a different location that would still be very accessible to summer high school tennis athletes and to the community. And there's a huge field that is predominantly has been always football. That is a little bit higher elevated, that we can run the drainage and we can rebuild these courts. So you can see in your packets and on the screen, we had a preliminary design. I originally had asked Tony for a 10-court design. The reason why I wanted to see 10 courts was, number one, if we're going to host major tournaments, it's really nice to have more courts versus more locations. But also in tennis, you have 1 singles, 2 singles, 3 singles, 1 doubles, and 2 doubles for both the varsity and the JV. And I thought, you know, a lot of places I've been, we had 10 courts. Well, that's going to be very expensive, and so we have scaled it back to a phased effort where we're working with a design company for 5 courts that we could expand out into eventually, hopefully, 10 courts in this next project cycle. So we are working on it. We know it's a problem, and we're taking the steps we can to rectify it the soonest. And speak, if I'm out of line here, the soonest we think we could have something that's playable for our athletes at Somerville High School would be in the fall, because it's just going to take us that much time to design it, develop it, actually construct it, and then also pay for it. Tony, did I miss anything?
You're absolutely right. It's going to take some time because, you know, everywhere we break ground around here, we have bad soil. That's just a fact of life, and we're going to have to do a geotech survey. That's what starts the ball rolling with the A&E firm and get the soil samples in and find out what we're going to have to do to remediate that, and then build on top of that and run lighting at the same time. But more importantly is drainage. We have to have drainage either on the courts or in between the courts and around the courts as well, but it has to have a place to drain to. And that's the problem with the existing part. We went down there after the last storm, and the water table had risen somewhat. So that's the reason that it's in the shape it's in now. It just never it wasn't built in a good spot.
Dr. Robbins, do you know if have there been any other discussions? At one point, the county was talking about, I think, like a sports tennis complex across from the Ashley River Park. I think they had acquired that land, and at some point I thought I heard discussion of like a partnership with the district. Have we pursued that at all?
It was a couple of years ago was the last time we really heard from them on that, and it's kind of just gone dormant in terms of the partnership. We were just looking to make sure we still had courts on our campus so our kids didn't have to get in a bus to try to get to a practice site. I don't know where they are. I do know that part of that was through a USTA grant as well. And so the only grant option that we're really familiar with right now is the lighting piece to the courts. I can definitely, Tony or I can circle back and see if they're still discussing that.
Maybe something worth trying. And again, I think it would be in addition to, but it may be a good option for us. So.
Okay.
The monthly update for the other facilities projects, the HVAC upgrades at Knightsville and Span. We've got 4 more units to come in for Knightsville. Currently working on the punch list at both schools, working out all the bugs. If you can imagine changing out a couple hundred air conditioners, there's going to be some bugs to work out, and we're getting through on that. Be through with that within the next several weeks. The partial roof replacements at Gregg and Span, that they had some weather setbacks, but they are making some great headway, and soon they will be done with all of the membrane installation at both of those schools. At Fort Dorchester High School Media Center to Kate conversion, that was kind of a 2-phase project where we went in and we redid the entire reception area to make a more secure reception area. That part was completed and accepted and passed by OSF before school started, and then we put all the forces on the media center, and they're doing really well. They had the overhead inspection. The pre-final overhead was last week, and they passed that. They're going to have the final overhead inspection this week, and hopefully we can get that wrapped up a little bit ahead of the estimated completion time. The track at Fort Dorchester High School, that contract has been awarded, and we're communicating with the company that we awarded a contract to have a pre-construction meeting hopefully sometime this week. Hopefully we get somebody down here. The Sand Hill portable classrooms, and this is directly related to student growth. We had third-party inspection last week, and OSF has a new process now where they don't have to come out. So the third party comes in, they inspect it, we send a finalized discrepancy report to the architect fills out a F9 form, sends that to OSF, and the last one we did was the Community Learning Center. Within 24 hours of that email, we received the CO. So it streamlined the process. It took a lot of the moving parts out of the way. The OSF inspectors, they're stretched thin now But what they're focusing on now is design reviews, and that's the great thing about it, is we're getting a better review on the design. So we had a few discrepancies on the Sandhill portables. Those were completed today. We're hoping to get the third party back out there or send in pictures tomorrow, and hopefully have the CO by the end of the week on those. On the wing addition at Sandhill, the construction documents, they have been submitted to OSF, and we're just waiting back for comments from OSF, and that's always a little bit of a back and forth thing. They send comments, the architect will incorporate those comments and send them back. So hopefully we'll be going out looking for a contractor on that project very, very soon. And like I said, the Community Learning Center, that's a done deal. I think they wrapped up the punch list last week, but we always have a 1 year connection with the contractor when they do a project like that. So they'll be there for us anytime we need them. The bus maintenance facility at Oak Brook, they are wrapping up the design of the construction documents now, and hopefully we'll have those into OSF for review sometime within the month. Oak Brook Middle School, those documents, construction documents, are at OSF right now. The first round of comments came back last week. The architect is going to send that back this week, and hopefully we're even closer on that one than we are Sandhill. And as you can tell, most of these projects are related to student growth, our population growth. So more seats. We're about 2 weeks behind on the elementary school than we are from the middle school, just because of the time discussions we had internally where we needed seats and when. So, but hopefully we'll catch all that up and combine that into one project for both schools with one contractor. The Greenway Boulevard sidewalk, we had the pre-construction meeting out there last week before last, and the contractor is going to meet with the town to talk about some stormwater stuff, preparation for that, and they'll get started on that as soon as they can and get that sidewalk in very soon. At the ponds, Dr. Robbins said the CM at risk talks are underway, and hopefully we'll get that out to everybody sometime in the very, very near future. And that's all I have.
Do we have the picture that you could update us or send us again of the Fort Dorchester Media Center, like the layout, the
design?
The design.
Yes, ma'am. I can get that to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have it with me right now, but
Yeah. No, that's fine. I appreciate that.
yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? Going once?
So when do we think that I mean, I know you said that the third-party inspections completed for the portables at Sandhill. Do we think will be?
We're moving furniture in tomorrow. They'll
Okay.
probably have kids in there next week.
Oh, perfect. Great. Thank
That's
you.
our plan. We had a great plan. We were well ahead of it. The vendor kind of tripped us up with the late June delivery.
Yeah, I remember.
So
it
we,
was-
the team jumped through hurdles to get those things completed, installed within about a month time frame. And then, I forget who said it, throw in a hurricane. And so here we're a couple weeks behind. But all in all, we're in constant conversation with Mr. Joy and the
Yeah.
admin team at Sandhill, and
I'm sure they're just
he's
rolling.
being
with it.
patient. He's eager to put furniture and children into the portal.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
One last thing. Do you have a timeline for the track? I know there was some issues with the ground and different things like that. So do we know if it will be ready for track season or when the projected timelines are?
We are projecting that it will be ready for the next track season. We had another hiccup in that whole process. The first vendor that we had, the successful bidder, backed out, set us back a few days. Well, probably more than that, I would say. He didn't do us any favors. I'll put it that way. And so we're pushed a little bit farther down the road on that. But hopefully we can work with a successful bidder and get things going, that they should have all the information they need, because we did pause for a geotech survey. So they know exactly what they have to do on day one. So it's just a matter of getting them to mobilize and getting equipment on the ground and start tearing track up.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, board members, for student enrollment recommendations, I believe that information was uploaded into our packets. Is everyone okay with doing that in open session? Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept it, but then I do have a question before we vote on it.
Okay. So I have a motion from Mr. Farnsworth to accept the student enrollment recommendations as received in our packet. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Guthrie.
Can we get a little bit, I don't know if we need to do that in executive session or not. That one, it looks like an out-of-district transfer. Is that common? I don't know that I've seen that.
Yeah, it looks like original request, because if it's a repeat request, it'd be yes. Is that? Oh, well, it doesn't say that on there. It just says, that doesn't say what it is, the reason for request. Yeah, I mean, because we don't accept out-of-district enrollments unless it's military. Only if it's military.
Yeah, but it's from another district. I will, I'm going to withdraw my motion so we can talk about that in executive session. I would make a motion that we discuss this student enrollment request in executive session.
Okay. We have a motion to discuss the student enrollment request in executive session. Do I have a second?
Can you get the paperwork?
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Guthrie. Any discussion? All right. All in favor? Okay. And the motion carries. Is that 6 and 1 absent? Okay. So we will hold to discuss that in executive session. Before we move to that, we'll do the personnel reports.
Madam Chair, can we convene into an executive session when we don't have a item for enrollment recommendations listed on our agenda?
Yeah, and Ms. Bates is correct. Again,
Yeah.
I don't know.
So you would either have to
I don't know if we can get the information
table it.
of what that is. That's the first time I've ever seen that type of request.
Okay. Well, I think the other option is we can hold that student enrollment recommendation for our next meeting, and at that point, we can convene into executive session to discuss it.
And I promise, I'm not trying to be difficult. I just don't,
Yeah,
that's
I'll
an
do
unusual one.
Yeah, I'll have to talk to team.
Need to make a motion to hold it, right?
Again, I don't know if that's something that can wait 2 weeks.
Well, all we have voted for at this point is to discuss it in executive session. We have not voted to go into executive session. So we will still discuss it in executive session. It will just not be at this meeting.
Okay, but what does that do to the student?
Right.
I mean, that keeps the student out of school for another 2 weeks until we meet again, correct?
If you all want to go on to personnel, I'll see if I can't pull up Power School and get some info.
We can still vote on it. It's just, I mean.
Yeah, do we have some way we can get the information now so that we can go ahead in open session and go through it?
Okay, so
maybe we can go on with personnel and then come back to that?
Yes, absolutely. So, all right. Moving on to personnel. Board members, you received that information in your packet as well. And there are several classified and certified recommendations in there. And then there are 2 specific employee recommendations. So is everyone okay with doing that in open session? Yes. Okay. So do I have a motion to accept the
I
personnel
make a motion that we
recommendations?
accept it as presented.
Okay.
And
I have a
second.
Motion from Ms. Hughes, seconded from Mr. Guthrie. Any discussion in regards to the personnel recommendations? Okay. All right. Hearing none, then we will call for the vote on personnel recommendations. Okay, and the motion carries 6 in favor, 1 absent.
And then I guess point of privilege while we're vamping here, waiting for the information. We attended the Dorchester Showdown this past Friday, Kelly Bates and I, and our beloved superintendent was, he was summoned to the field on a surprise. I guess he had to kick an extra point to raise money for, I guess, the Dorchester Unified Track Team. And the way it was structured is a DD4 superintendent went first. And I guess he was a former soccer player. That's what until I heard. So like they're saying, all right, he's got this. So he kicked it right through super easy. And then I guess the pressure was on our superintendent to go next. And everybody was watching, and like, is he gonna do it? Is he gonna do it? And then he actually picked up the ball. No, he moved it backwards about 5 yards. So I guess the DD4 superintendent was a little bit closer. So you moved it back. I saw that.
I did.
So,
not on purpose.
He didn't realize he did that.
But yeah, he made it. Everybody went wild, raised money for the charity.
Unified Track Team?
Yeah.
Very exciting.
So we were proud of our superintendent, his athletic abilities.
Good job, Dr. Robbins.
He's it's a returning request. Do you have any more information besides what you shared with me? So that student's been with us since the 9th grade? Okay. Yeah. They have to. Do they live currently out of the district? We're trying to understand why the request. Yeah.
According to our current records, the student resides in an area that is zoned for the school they are requesting. I'm not sure why that form says out of district. It could be a mistake on the part of the person who made the form. I don't know, but it does appear the student is a senior who has been in the district, so we're happy to obtain more information and bring it back to the board at the next board meeting if you all are so inclined to wait. It does appear that the student is currently enrolled in school, so.
Yeah, and again, I'll just to clarify, and so if they're enrolled and they're in school, then I think we just wait till the next meeting. The reason this is important to me, I visited some of our high school folks in the recent couple weeks, and I will tell you, especially Somerville High School is bursting at the seams. And so one student may not seem like that big of a deal, but one student is a big deal to the high school principals. And so that's the only reason that I'm kind of hesitant, just to make sure we're doing it on the up and up and everything looks good.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but if he is enrolled in our school district and he is enrolled and assigned to that school, we have no reason to be voting. So we don't need to even follow through with that. And then if you come back and tell us that that's not the case at the next meeting, then we can at that time vote on it. Right? Right. Right.
Yeah, I think you can table it, and in the short term, he's already at the school. The address we have, he's zoned for the school. What we'll do is, like we do with a lot of students, we'll do our research to make sure he's actually at that address and he's appropriately in the school. If he isn't, then that's a different story. If he is, we'll bring back a follow-up to you in 2 weeks if that's okay. Is that fine? Okay.
Well then, Madam Chair, I guess you need a motion to table the student enrollment recommendation until the next board meeting.
Okay. Motion to table by Mrs. Bates. Is there seconded by Ms. Hughes? Any questions or discussion? Okay. All in favor? Okay. And the motion carries 6 in favor, 1 absent. And at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Ms. Hughes, seconded by Ms. Powell. Oh, no, I apologize. Sorry, excuse me, in my rush to finish the meeting. We do not have any public comments this evening. My apologies. So, all right, I believe we had a motion from Ms. Hughes, a second by Ms. Powell. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of going home? Yes, I believe it is. Yes, please. And the motion carries 6 in favor, 1 absent. We are adjourned.